Retired Air Force Brigadier General John Teichert, author of the book In God I Trust, back with us once again tonight. General, nice to see you. Thanks for being in. So the president was supposed to have this meeting at Camp David. Cited weather, brought him back to the White House, and some of it played out before the cameras, much shorter than normal than the traditional cabinet meetings. Where do you think we are tonight, given what you've heard, what Robert's reporting, what we've seen?
Blake, I was bullish on a deal at the beginning of the weekend, primarily because the president was talking to a lot of the regional leaders, and it sounded like the regional leaders were in consolidated lockstep to try to help pressure Iran to make a deal. But I think since then, we've backslid, and we've gone back to making threats and not seeing those threats fulfilled. And right now, I don't expect there to be a deal, and I fear that if we continue to threaten strikes and not follow through, then it hinders our credibility.
So in that meeting today, there was a theme, I mean, several themes, but one of them was this idea of, you know, we have all these other options. Let me play it.
I just want to remind everybody, Mr. President, you know this well, you have other options available to you.
So whether it is through the efforts of your negotiators that they ensure that they never have a nuclear weapon, or we have to go back to the War Department to finish the job that way, we're prepared to do that.
We're not satisfied with it, but we will be. We will be either that or we'll have to just finish the job.
You had a new article out today in which you wrote the following. You say, in lieu of a deal that firmly meets strategic interests, it's time to end the ceasefire and engage in a strategic interdiction campaign to strike at the heart of the Iranian regime. You believe that time has come. Why?
I do. I think for the first 6 weeks of kinetic activity, we sub-optimize the use of force. On day one in Air War College, you're taught that you want to use air power strikes in the most strategic way possible. That means taking a step back and mapping out what matters most to the regime. What are their sources of power? And then strike those type of targets. Not launchers, not air defense sites. Those are a means to an end. But striking at the core of what makes the regime strong, we never did that, and it's time to start.
Okay, so what you think could be if, right, and I'm throwing out a could be and an if here, but here's what you say. Karg Island, which of course stores the oil, power and energy sites, which the president had threatened, security hubs and transportation hubs. What do you mean by that, and what do you think is most likely if the president goes forward with strikes?
I think via exquisite intelligence and an understanding of the regime, you don't just strike large scale in those areas. You find those particular targets that map most strategically to the regime's ability to stay in power or to fund their ability to stay in power for the long term. And then you strike those types of targets. That includes Karg, but a whole slew of others. And I think once you start to do that, it sends a message to the regime that hasn't been sent thus far, that we are willing to neuter your ability to stay in power and threaten others by striking those types of targets.
All right, I hear you, but the president also says that Iran right now is in a free fall, and thus the argument is that the blockade and some of the strategy is working. Here he was.
They want to just make a deal. They want to. I don't think they have a choice. They're just going back to the internet because they're getting clobbered. Their economy is in free fall. They have 250% inflation. Their money has no value. Their whole economic system is broken down.
There's obviously a world in which that exists and in which that's the case. The question is, why not continue down that road for how long to try to get the result that is intended or hoped for?
We're in a race against the clock. That is the pressure of the blockade on the regime versus pressure on the president of the United States domestically and internationally. If we would have started that blockade at the beginning of kinetic activity, then we would have a head start. But right now, it's 50-50 which way that's going to play out. And the way that you accelerate that timeline to our benefit is to start striking.
I asked you a question before the show that struck me, and I asked you, and I'll say it here, which was, what % of your peers, give or take, think the same as you right now, which is that it's time to move back to strikes? And you told me 70%, which is not a small number. That's a lot closer to 100 than the other way. Is that likely the advice that the president has been getting at this point? And why is that number so high in your estimation among your peers?
First of all, why it's so high? Two reasons. Number one, every time the president threatens something and doesn't follow through, then it diminishes his and our credibility. We're 7 weeks into a 2-week ceasefire, and that credibility gap concerns me and concerns the force. Number two, we sub-optimized the use of force like I described earlier in the first 6 weeks of the war. We didn't strike strategic targets. We focused on operational level issues and not mapping those up to strategic wins. And because of those two reasons, the force is concerned. I believe the president or the Secretary of War are getting those recommendations, but thus far we haven't seen them play out.
All right, we'll leave it there. General Teichert, always nice of you.
Thanks, Blake.